Hello, Pine Cliffs. This is your host for this evening, Thomas Sharp. Welcome to the Pine Cliffs Observer, watching them to keep you safe. Well, if you are listening to this, that means that Galen, your regular host, has gone on vacation. He goes on vacation 2 or 3 times a year, and that leaves the hosting duties to me. But since I don't have time to manage the station and host the show, I've recorded a few broadcasts. That way, we have someone hosting the show, and I can just do my normal manager duties. Of course, you all know this, Pine Cliffs. It's not like this is the first time you've heard of me, or one of my recorded broadcasts. Now, since this is a recorded broadcast, I won't be able to deliver any news, of course. I'm just a manager. Can't see into the future. That's a bit beyond my pay grade. Normally, Pine Cliffs, I'd use this broadcast to tell you a bit of history about our wonderful little town. Maybe tell you about how Mr. Eaton came to lead our country. But I think I've done both of those enough. I know it's a bit unorthodox. We usually only do this for the recently deceased at the station, but I'd like to give a little biography. So here it is, Pine Cliffs. A little background on your regular host, Galen Good. Galen and I have been friends for years in Pine Cliffs. His parents moved here about when we were in the 7th grade, when Galen showed up at our little school in the 7th grade. We weren't friends at first, just acknowledged each other's existence. But then we had to do a group project for our murder mystery and historical fiction class. I did handle the historical fiction. He handled the murder mystery. It was so much fun, Pine Cliffs. After that, we were close friends, always working on projects together, catching the occasional Lumberjacks game at the college. It was fun, Pine Cliffs. But, well, our freshman year was a little different. I had made some statements that I know now are wrong, that cast Mr. Eaton in a less than positive light. Managed to get myself sent to one of the detention camps Mr. Eaton had set up to correct people with such inaccurate views. I left that place a few months later feeling different, a bit down in the dumps, but hey, signing a contract with Mr. Eaton will do that to you, right? Well, that feeling lasted for quite a while, but Galen managed to snap me out of it. We had this big fight whether he'd understand what went on in that camp. I convinced him that he wouldn't with my fists, despite his passionate counter-argument, and that snapped me out of it, Pine Cliffs. A fight with a good friend? Something to just take my mind off of all of it. The rest of high school was great for Galen, of course. It was his senior year when he met his future fiancée, Elizabeth Maller. That really hit it off, Pine Cliffs. She supported him when he was getting himself licensed as a private investigator. He stood by her when Big Ed's dinner was shut down and she lost her job. Of course, Galen and I would still hang out, usually at the bar by the station. The serious note. Galen would order some mixed drinks, I'd get a beer, and we'd just talk. After he got licensed as a private investigator, he started to work at the sheriff's office with future Sheriff Isaac Maller. Around then, he'd start wearing a trench coat and fedora, had that snub-nosed revolver of his put neatly away in his shoulder holster. I told him he looked stupid, and he just said, "I'm a PI now, Thomas. I might as well look the part." At the bar, he'd usually talk about whatever case he was working on, as much as he could without getting in trouble anyways. I'd talk about how things were going at the station, how hosting was going, management training, that kind of thing. Every now and then, he'd have me ask, Anyone who's seen so-and-so to come to the sheriff's office? It was at the serious note that Galen asked me to be his best man at his wedding. He had finally gotten engaged to Elizabeth. Those were good times. Time for the weather forecast. Well, this is a recording, so I can't tell you much. I can tell you that Monday will be very, very cold, Pine Cliffs. Try to keep your pipes from bursting and stay warm. Galen's life took a turn when he started to work on the Southside Slayer case. As you know, Pine Cliffs, for a number of years, people were being gunned down at the south side of town. Sometimes it would die down for a while. Sometimes there would be as many as 5 fatal shootings in a month. Well, Galen decided that he was going to stop it, that he would figure out what was going on. Started looking at the old autopsies at the bodies that would be found at the scene of the crime. He determined that all of the deaths could be attributed to one person. He even thought that he had found the madman responsible. But things didn't go too well for him. You see, he actually managed to find the Southside Slayer, but not before one last victim was claimed. The night Galen confronted the killer, he found Elizabeth lying dead on the floor. When the Slayer ran, Galen didn't follow. He just knelt over his fiancée, staring but not really seeing. He changed that night. What had been a mixed drink turned into all the booze he could get, like he was trying to drown that part of him that remembered. I'd never seen him like that, Pine Cliffs. He stopped working at the sheriff's office. From open to close, he'd be at the bar trying to kill a bottle. It was bad, so I did the only thing I could think to do. What he had done for me. Just give him something to take his mind off of what had happened. Something besides the booze. I sat at the bar with him one night, waiting until he got blackout drunk. Then, I got him in my car, got him into his apartment, and waited for him to sober up a bit. When he finally came to, I told him to hurry up, to clean up already, that he was late for work. He was understandably confused and hungover, and still a bit drunk. But then, I told him that while he was blackout drunk, I had told him about a job opening at a station, and that he told me that he'd gladly take the job. He looked at me for a moment, like he didn't believe me, shrugged, and went to find some clean clothes. Of course, I had never actually told him about a job opening. He had never agreed to work at the station while he was blackout drunk, but hey, I had to do something. Galen was, and still is, a good person. He deserved better than what had been done to him, to Elizabeth. He deserved better than a life spent trying to drown his sorrows. So I helped him, just like he helped me. After he threw himself into his new job as a radio host with enthusiasm. We don't go into the serious note anymore. Galen refuses to set foot in that place. Can't say I blame him. And sure, we don't have our conversations there anymore, but we do talk here at work. His life is back to normal, or as close to it as he can manage. He rarely takes any time off, only does for 2 days a year. The day he lost Elizabeth, and the day they would have been married, he doesn't do anything during those days. Just kind of wanders around town, taking particular care to stay away from bars or liquor stores. Just walks around, thinking about what could have been, until he can throw himself back into his work and for a time, forget. So, if you find him wandering the streets, his coat buttoned up against some unseen storm, hat turned downward against some unseen wind, maybe walk with him a bit, provide some support, some understanding to a man that needs it. Well, Pine Cliffs, that is probably all the time needed for today's broadcast. Next on our airwaves, who knows? I don't. This is a recording, remember. In any case, this is Thomas Sharp, signing off. Thank you for making me a part of your day, Pine Cliffs. Goodbye. This episode was written by Kuhalan96 and narrated by myself, Raener Lewington. Since I'm narrating, I have to say whatever Kuhalan's written here, but he's lazy, so he's not going to abuse this power. If you like this show, please like, favorite, comment, and subscribe. And by the way, thanks for listening.